Every empire receives warnings before decline becomes visible. They never arrive as headlines. They arrive as quiet signals inside the productive core of the economy. Rome ignored them. Britain dismissed them. The Soviet Union explained them away. And today, the United States is doing the same thing. Not because the signs aren't visible, but because they contradict the story everyone wants to believe. For months now, attention has been fixed on markets, on technology, on artificial intelligence, on the promise that innovation alone can outrun structural weakness. But empires don't fail at the top. They fail at the base. And the base of the modern American economy just sent a warning that almost no one is talking about. Manufacturing. Not because factories dominate employment anymore, but because manufacturing is where demand reveals itself first, before confidence collapses elsewhere. 10 months ago, something began to break. Not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly. The manufacturing sector slipped below expansion, then stayed there, month after month. Today, it has now contracted for 10 straight months. And the number itself matters less than what it represents. When manufacturing contracts, it is not an opinion, it is a measurement of reality. New orders decline, backlogs dry up, hours are cut, employment weakens, prices remain elevated. And once that sequence begins, it has never reversed without broader economic damage. This is not a theory, it is a pattern. In every major empire, decline begins when production weakens while costs remain high, when wages fall in real terms, when debt expands to hide the damage, and when confidence becomes disconnected from capacity. The Roman Empire experienced this when silver coinage lost weight, but prices kept rising. Merchants reduced production, labor participation fell, tax burdens increased, and the state responded by debasing further, accelerating the cycle. In Britain, the pattern emerged after industrial dominance faded. Manufacturing slowed, wages stagnated, costs rose, and finance was expanded to preserve living standards without rebuilding productive strength. In the Soviet Union, production quotas were maintained on paper, while output collapsed in reality. Orders declined, inventories piled up, and labor participation fell quietly before the system fractured openly. The mechanism is always the same, and today the same mechanism is visible again. New orders inside US manufacturing have been contracting for months, not sharply, consistently. And that consistency is the danger. Because new orders are the lifeblood of production. They are not sentiment, they are commitment. When new orders fall, factories don't immediately lay off workers. They reduce hours, they delay hiring, they protect margins, they wait. That waiting period creates the illusion of stability. Payroll numbers remain strong, headlines remain calm. Markets remain confident. But underneath, paychecks are shrinking. Hours worked are declining. Overtime disappears. Income weakens quietly. This is how labor markets break before unemployment rises. And this is where many analysts make a critical mistake. They look at employment levels. But empires collapse on income, not headcount. A population can remain employed while becoming poorer, and that is the most destabilizing phase of decline. Because when wages fall in real terms while prices remain elevated, consumption weakens. Debt fills the gap, and stress accumulates invisibly. Today, manufacturing input prices are still rising. Raw materials remain elevated. Margins are compressed, and producers are unable to pass costs forward. This is not inflation cooling. It is inflation becoming selective. Producers absorb the pressure. Workers absorb the pressure. Consumers absorb the pressure. And the system responds not with productivity, but with leverage. This is where the modern era differs from earlier empires. The United States no longer relies on manufacturing to maintain confidence. It relies on asset prices, stocks, real estate, financial assets. As long as those rise, the system appears healthy. But assets are claims on future income, and when income weakens, those claims eventually reprice. Manufacturing reveals this before markets do, because manufacturing reacts to demand, not narratives, and demand is weakening. Export orders have been contracting for months. Global demand is not absorbing excess capacity. And unlike previous cycles, there is no external engine ready to pull the system forward. In past downturns, another economy expanded while America slowed. That offset the damage. This time, the slowdown is global. China is not absorbing excess production. Europe is stagnating. Global trade volumes are shrinking. And that removes the safety valve that preserved stability in earlier cycles. As new work dries up, backlogs disappear. And backlogs are the final buffer between contraction and layoffs. Once backlogs are exhausted, labor reductions follow. Not gradually, suddenly. This is already beginning. Manufacturing employment indices show contraction. Hours worked are falling, and income pressure is intensifying. At the same time, inflation remains elevated. This combination has a name, and every empire that experienced it suffered the same outcome. Stagflation. Rising prices, shrinking incomes, falling confidence. This is the most destructive economic environment for social stability, because people feel poorer while being told the system is strong. And when belief breaks, markets follow. Asset markets do not collapse when optimism fades. They collapse when cash flows weaken. The housing market is already reflecting this. Builders reduce activity not because rates are high, but because demand is soft. Households do not form when income is uncertain. They delay, they retreat, they wait. And once again, manufacturing reveals this before housing data does. Fewer appliances, fewer materials, fewer durable goods. Production contracts because consumption contracts. Refunds, stimulus, incentives, and promises cannot reverse this. They only delay recognition. In strong economies, excess cash is invested. In weak economies, excess cash is hoarded or used to survive. This is not speculation, it is historical behavior. During every major downturn, liquidity stops flowing into growth assets and starts flowing into safety. And safety is not innovation, it is preservation. This is why financial bubbles always burst during periods of declining real income. Not because technology fails, but because affordability fails. The stock market does not melt up during shrinking paychecks. It reprices downward. It always has. And when leverage is high, repricing becomes violent. Today, debt levels are elevated across households, corporations, and governments, not to expand production, but to maintain appearances. That works until labor markets break. And labor markets are breaking quietly right now. The danger is not that this process is new. The danger is that it is familiar. Every empire believed it had found a way around it. Every empire believed innovation, finance, or reform would break the pattern. None did. Because decline is not caused by technology gaps. It is caused by imbalance between production, consumption, and cost. And that imbalance is widening again. This does not mean collapse is immediate. Empires do not fall overnight. They weaken, they adjust, they deny, they reprice. first quietly, then publicly. Manufacturing is where the quiet phase becomes visible, and today it is flashing the same warning it has flashed before every major downturn. Not fear, not panic, but inevitability. This is the stage where awareness matters, where understanding replaces optimism, where history provides clarity instead of comfort. Because the goal is not to predict dates, it is to recognize phases. And the United States has entered the phase where production weakens before confidence collapses. The same phase Rome ignored. The same phase Britain delayed. The same phase the Soviet Union denied. Empires do not fail because no one warns them. They fail because no one listens. If you want to understand what comes next, subscribe. This channel exists to explain systems before headlines do, not to alarm, but to prepare. Because history does not repeat, it rhymes. And the rhyme has begun. Subscribe for more.